Not sure. I think I may have just hit the wrong button, but we are recording again. So there might be two parts to this, to the video on this. And hang on just one second. Let me do a screen share. All right. So once you've gone in and put the winery name and your details and whatever, have a field day with this. If you want to increase the production to 10,000 cases or decrease it to 500 cases, if you want to raise or lower the FOB, go through the program to see what sort of the benchmark pricing and costs are, and then go have a field day. Now, at the very end of the course, you're going to be able to do either a continuation of this project, a completely new project, but I think you'll find if you put some time and effort into this, you can learn to knock out, okay, I'm going to make 500 cases of a $150 wine, and how does that margin compare with 10,000 cases of a $25 wine, that kind of thing. All right, so go in and play with it. Make sure that you know how to open and save and recall the project. Did you have any questions on that, Dan or Rachel?
Yeah, I had a little trouble starting out, to be honest with you. So once I hit edit, I was off and running. Okay,
great. And then make sure again that you bookmark it. It's going to change the URL, and then that URL is how you get back to another workbook. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I do is I've got actually a folder of projects, and whenever I want, you can make during the course of this class, and then also you get a year's license to these workbooks. That alone's a $360 a year cost. Once you've got a project underway, when you save it, make sure that you save it with something that you can find. So for example, if I go in, it asks me to name this, and I could call this Paso Robles Zinfandel and put a price in and whatever and save it. Okay. Then when I want to open it, I just go back to that bookmark to open the project. If I want to do a new project, I hit save on this corner up here, and then notice you can also save as PDF. And when you save it as a PDF, this is how you're going to email to me, and with that in the subject line, put project, wine business class project or something like that, and then attach the PDF to it, and then I mark you as complete. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you save it as a PDF, it'll ask you where, and you can do it to your desktop or a folder and so on. Now, the other thing is that when I'm ready to start a new project, I can actually then go in and go back to the auto filter, and then I could go in and start a new one, and then I would want to save the new one in the similar fashion. I want to hit new here. Don't forget underneath there to hit new. Okay. And voila, I'm ready to start a new project. So the other thing is later, I'll show you that if you've got a lot of fixed costs in there and you want to do a new project, you can save it and you can clone the project also. So a number of different options. Okay?
Okay.
So save it as a PDF, send it to me, and we're good to go.
Okay.
Does that make sense for you, Rachel?
Yeah.
All right. So a couple things about the workbook, and then we're going to go through it. It looks like, I think Wednesday we should have the new California Grape Crush Report for anybody who's interested. In the 2017 one, there's tons and tons of data and whatever, but the new report will be out, and I'll send a notice to everybody of that. So the key is that when you're looking at grape costs, really getting present to the contribution to the bottom line that could be gained by lowering the cost of grapes, and the impact of selecting higher value grapes by negotiation and by sourcing, and how that impacts the bottom line. Remember, everybody, that the homework is when you're in a tasting room, when you're in a wine shop, when you're having a bottle of wine at dinner, if something catches your eye as different, or that brings up a business question, snap a picture of the label and post it with whatever the question or whatever the thought is. When you're in the store, right now, I highly recommend everybody go into just a good quality grocery store, or Total Wines and More and so on. Spend some time looking at red blends. See what's out there for $25 a bottle. What kind of grapes are they using? What kind of AVA or grape source, the origin, are they using also? You'll find a number of really good quality wines from Paso Robles and the Sierra Foothills, and even more just with a plain California appellation. And remember this, keep this in your head: the ability to create a great label, a hook for the consumer, deliver a flavor profile that meets the expectations of the market in a price, with a red blend with non-traditional blend varieties, can be a cash cow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And look and see what's out there, and think in your head, okay, well, these people are using a fairly tight, if you see a Napa Meritage or a red blend that has a $25 price tag, and they're using Cabernet, Merlot, classic Bordeaux varieties, be in awe. And ask yourself, who owns this winery? How the hell are they making a $25 wine sourcing grapes from Napa? And how this kind of unfolds, if you think in terms of doing a case study, I had a couple instances where somebody will find a winery like Napa Wine Cellars and say, wow, they're only 50,000 case winery. On that scale, how can they have their costs be so low? And do either of you know the answer to that, Rachel or Dan?
No.
Napa Wine Cellars is owned by Trinchero, the Sutter home.
Oh.
So they've got the efficiencies, they've got the purchasing department, they've got human resources, they've got equipment, they've got farming, they've got storage facilities that are approaching 10 million cases of wine, all right? So that's the other thing, and if anybody's reading the headlines, and you guys should be going to winebusinessnews.com or winebusiness.com or Wine Industry Network websites to look at the news feeds. Constellation Brands is divesting over 30 brands out of their portfolio, and predominantly at the low end of things, and they sold them to Gallo.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And Gallo and Constellation and the wine group, if you take, these top 5 or top 10 producers, they're all way, way up there. But now there's sort of a reorganization of who's going to own what area of the business and where are they going to focus. And so in a heartbeat, think of the business implications of consolidation from a vineyard standpoint, from a production standpoint, from a distribution, sales and marketing, and all the way down the downstream in the supply chain. Okay, and through this course, that's actually going to make a really interesting topic, because the logistics and the changing of products in a portfolio can be really, really challenging and come with a whole boatload of business considerations. For the Master of Wine student, this is great because it allows you critical thinking. What are the pluses and the minuses of that kind of consolidation? What happens to vineyards that are perhaps associated with those brands and with those wineries? So all sorts of stuff going on, all right? So when you look at grapes and grape mix, don't think about just the, it's a soupçon of this and a dash of this and to blend and this and whatever. If you can come up with the right mixture of grapes, play the spot market on as large an area as possible, you've got a really good potential bottom line. So your gross margin is going to be very strong. You've got flexibility for sourcing the grapes in a variety of different supply and demand conditions. You can substitute grapes because you're not wedded to the Bordeaux varieties or the Rhone varieties or those kind of things, all right? So, all right. And Mara had some questions about now what? Now we're getting into the production, and just in quick review, are you making wine full production? And Wednesday, I'm going to be introducing you to a new workbook that's a blending workbook and a blending project that will be actually, you're going to be playing wine blending, but with a financial component, not just sort of the artsy fartsy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that to make the best wine. You're going to have to make the best profit too. If you and Dan, you're going to be looking at doing some custom crush and so on of your fruit and developing your brand. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
So the way that you would use this, if this were the production cost for my winery, I would need to work with my accountant to determine what is the allocated cost per ton for basic production of wine in my winery, all right? And so we have a number in here, $800 a ton. When you're talking to custom crush people, have you done that yet, Dan?
No, I'll be doing that in a few weeks.
Great. Well, you can actually start to work this up, and you can take their numbers and plug them in. Because they're going to base their processing and their services on a cost per ton of processing. And so you'll be able to look and see what does this cover, what's included, and so on. These additional costs are typically specific to either a vintage condition or to a special type of wine. So let's say that that you're working in an area and you're having a really hot harvest, hot weather during the harvest, you may have to accommodate chilling the grapes down. Excuse me, I'm having a heck of a time with my throat. So must chilling, you might need some special sorting of the grapes or treatments if the grapes aren't in optimal condition, if there's maybe mildew and damage and stuff like that. So and then thinking about things like lab work, most often if you're working with your accountant and the winery cost per ton of production, the lab work and all of these other things are generally included. But this kind of has people think about it. And the one thing you're going to really find fascinating, which is a nice word for a pain in the ass, Dan, is that when you start working with the custom crush people, you're going to find their cost per ton is, anywhere from $250 a ton to $1,500 a ton. And you've really got to pay attention to additional fees. Are you getting the fixed price all in everything you need, or are they giving you a cost of processing, but that every time you write an additional work order and anytime you need this done, and it's the a la carte menu, becomes very important for what's paying, what's covered and what's not in your contract.
Well, this wonderful tool that you created is going to help me shop out the custom crush operations.
Yes, indeed. And yeah. Then of course we've got our taxes and so forth. And the one thing I wanted to just flag out here and reiterate, when you look at things like the taxes, a lot of times people have ideas, well, I'm going to make a little bit of this kind of wine, or I'm going to try this, or I'm going to go to this market and not that market. And you'd be amazed at how sometimes looking at the tax tables, and especially the state-by-state tax that's applied, can help make your decision of where you're going to go do business and with what products. All right, barrel costs, and this is typically an a la carte thing for custom crush. And this is one of the areas that I really want you to get. Understanding the total costs involved with something rather than just topically. Most people who have been studying wine a while and go to vineyards and so forth know that barrels are expensive, and they can range anywhere from $800 or so to designer barrels that are, $13, $14, even $1,500 a barrel. And the considerations are, all right, that's for a new barrel. How many years are you going to use it? How many years are you going to have recycle it in your own program? Do you have any salvage cost at the end when the barrel's done? And so what's the laid-in cost? What's the barrel resale or transfer value? And the reason for a transfer value is, let's say that I'm going to have a certain wine in new French or American oak for however many months and so on. I can only use it once as a new barrel. And then I can either sell it to myself, or if it's part of your barrel plan, you sell it to another winery for use. But usually it's an internal transfer. And then how many years are you going to use it? So here we've got a new barrels at $1,300, a transfer price of $900 to go back into our own program. And once it goes into our own program, then we're going to use it for an additional 6 or even more years. And then you can see what the cost per month is. Something like the evaporation loss or evaporative loss can actually be more expensive than the barrel itself. And a lot of people don't know that. So you've got a loss of product, you've got to top it up with product. And if you've got a poorly maintained barrel facility, you can expect an evaporative loss of 10% per year. And that's why the cost of humidification and ambient temperature control is so expensive and so imperative, because if you don't have that, you're going to lose your butt, so to speak, B-U-T-T, in evaporation and losses during the course of the aging, all right? Then the other thing is that barrels take racks, they have to be cleaned. If you've got a 6,000 gallon tank, stainless steel tank, you can put it outside and insulate it and cool it. That would be the equivalent of about 100 barrels. And so the space that you need is many times greater than the footprint of a nice, tidy, 6,000 gallon stainless steel tank. All right. So think about these kind of things and the interrelationship with your bottom line. Cellar and storage, and again, Dan, this is going to be a biggie for you, because this is one of the things that it's all those little side dishes that when you get your bill, you thought your steak was $35, and now you got $4 for a potato and $6 for the asparagus, and they ask if you want hollandaise sauce, and you said yes, and that's another $4 or $5 on top of that, and the blah 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 blah. And so having appropriate temperature controlled storage, any additional treatments and stabilizations that aren't covered in the total winemaking costs. And again, these could be specialist exceptions for a wine that might need it, and other wines that you're making don't. And then the monthly storage, and this is this little thing that sort of smacks Custom Crush clients. What's all this? And it's all these little case good storage and in and out fees. Right? That's not like In and Out, the hamburger joint. That's like every time you ask for a sample, every time you move something from one place to another, etc. These things can add up. All right, packaging and bottling. There's so many innovations. There are so many cool avenues that you can go, and then a lot of considerations of thinking, again, downstream, down the supply chain. What's the effect of having this gigantic bottle? I've got one over here that's just a total freaking nightmare. Is the product you're making, does the market for that product expect a classic style of bottle shape? Is there a lingering idea in the market that you're going towards that corks are still the best closure versus screw caps? And in the course of 20 years ago, that gap has closed immeasurably. And I don't know about anybody else out there, but I'm so damn tickled every time I take a bottle of wine I've got to open and just, oh, thank you for having a screw cap anymore. But that might be an age-related issue. then you got to get it put into the bottle, everything done up, and then off we go to the cost breakdown. All right. So go in, noodle around, play with it. I don't care what kind of shape it's in when it gets to me. If you're seriously working on a project, if there's numbers you need to know, Dan, you and I can go over this, separately, and kind of go from there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Rachel, any questions for you?
No, it looks pretty good. I mean, I think I wrote in the Facebook account, but I already make wine, so most of this is pretty familiar.
Right. Yeah. Got it. And where? Do you mind if I ask where you make your wine and what you're doing?
So I actually have an AP agreement with a at a facility in Richmond, California. So yeah, so it's kind of complicated, but I'm still in the process of doing my compliance work and getting a license, because I've actually had to move 3 times for different reasons.
Understood.
Yes.
And just real quickly for the class, AP is an alternating proprietorship. And so this is an arrangement, and the timing's kind of perfect on this, because we're going to start to go into different production models and different ways to start a business. An alternating proprietorship is where a group of producers create a collective and purchase the building and equipment and supplies and whatever collectively, and then they share the equipment. And to participate, then you've got to own your own basic permits for production and so forth. The facility is permitted, and then when you're using certain equipment, you're the proprietor, so it's under your permit. And then when it's when somebody else is going to use the crusher, it's under their permit. So it's the facility permitting goes back and forth. So it's called alternating proprietorship. And how were your first couple of experiences? Did you run into facilities and personality and business issues?
To be honest, like mostly personality problems.
Yeah.
It's most people don't want to sign AP agreements if it's their facility. So the place I rent space at now is a little bit different, where it's not like we all co-own the equipment. It still really is owned by one person, but we pay a monthly fee basically that's based on your tonnage, and that includes usage of all of the equipment, although that's the only thing that's included. Like I still have to do all of my own labor and everything, bottling, lab work, everything.
Right.
But it's really difficult because I think that's how a lot of small wineries in California try to make extra money, is by entering alternate, AP agreements. But it's a nightmare because, it's their facility, and they just, I've had a lot of personality clashes with people that don't want you, using the equipment until like 10 p.m. at night, or they're not happy with the way you coiled the hoses. And it's just, it's like dating. You need to find the perfect relationship.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. So as we get into this, I'll be looking forward to having you share some of your firsthand experiences. And so we'll be going into that. We'll be looking at a state model production with vineyards and everything, winery only, no vineyards, alternating proprietorship, where you're still actually holding and registered as the producer, permitted as the producer, and then custom crush, which if you're contracting for custom crush, you're basically legally considered as a distributor. You're not the producer of record. It's not your permit. It's being contracted to a facility. And there's a lot of interesting things people are trying out, and we'll go into that in depth. Okay. Now, for any overachievers and and or for people with other needs. I just wanted to show one of the other workbooks, and this could be very, very valuable for anybody who also wants to really improve their understanding of development costs and operating costs and forecasting for a vineyard. So I'm just going to sort of show this quickly, provided that at this point I've answered any questions that Dan, you or Rachel have.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this and get out of it. I'm going to go into this upper left button called Auto Filter. And I'm going to go into, if I go down in here, you'll see a Vineyard P&L cash flow and workbook, and cash flow workbook, okay? I'm going to select New. And so Dan, you can sort of play with this at will, you know, do everything you need for the course now. You'll have availability of this also. Again, you would save your work, and you can do this for individual blocks of vineyard, or you can do it sort of as an aggregate for development. You put in the name of the vineyard or the block ID and whatever. So it might be, you know, whatever the vineyard name, and then a block number, your name, the date, and all this. And it gives you the basic revenue drivers for a vineyard. How many tons per acre are you going to get, and how much are you going to sell the fruit, or what's the transfer value to your winery, and then how many acres do you have, okay? You'll then see over on the left expenses per acre, expenses including harvest costs, gross revenue per acre, and then gross revenue total. And then over on the right, what were your development costs per acre total, annual expenses not including debt service, and gross margin, and then your gross per acre, and then gross margin for your total vineyard. Down in the bottom, we've set up a little forecasting matrix so that if you were to decide to step up your yield, you're going to see that it's going to then do all your calculations downstream, all right? So watch the numbers here, and you'll see as you increase your yield, or maybe you've got starlings this year, or weather problems and it's going down. But anyways, you can see the immediate impact of yield. And then you can also refer to this chart that if I'm at 3.5 tons, or let's take this down to 3 tons per acre at $3,000 a ton, right? That basically I'm not going to be running a very profitable operation, and it's going to give you different break-even and profit points. Profit is in this greenish gray color, and loss is in the red and pink. So as you go in and change your input, say, okay, what if I did 3 tons at $4,000 an acre, and I enter that in? Oh, well, that's obviously a lot better, etc. Okay, so that's the primary worksheet. Then there's the expenses worksheet, and for a deeper dive into what it takes to run a vineyard, just even reviewing this can be very, very valuable. If you have debt service, we just look at that as a total payment on an annual basis, and then it'll break it down to a per acre basis. Different harvesting options for machine harvesting, freight, taxes and fees, any other costs that you might have associated with your harvest. expenses for vineyard management, full-time labor, outside services, consulting, management fees, and then also the ability, you can either put in a general a payroll, but you can also then get a full breakdown of how many hours of irrigation work is needed and at how much per hour. Pest and disease monitoring, trellising, other labor, human resources expenses if you're using a temporary agency or those kind of things. Canopy management for pruning, for leaf removal, shoot positioning, netting, etc. And then nutritional additions broken down by pounds per acre or quarts, and then testing and cost of testing kits, chemicals, fungicides, crop regulators, machinery, irrigation and water costs, and blah, blah, blah. So there you go. More than you ever wanted to think about, Daniel, but I think you'll find this really, really handy. And again, anybody that wants to go in and play with this, get your primary work done, but play at your heart's content. Then in development costs, there's your cost of land per acre, any depreciation, work with your tax in accounting and bookkeeping, any development costs for ponds, dams, irrigation infrastructure, water rights, and allocation, a bigger and bigger issue. Water's becoming the #1 vineyard and winery consideration. I mean, it's really at the top of concerns and issues and costs. All your preparation. One of the things a lot of people are interested to know is that if you do get the proper permits for clearing trees and so on, you can actually get revenue for that. And so additional revenue from trees and wood material, trellising, ripping, preparation, surveys, planting, how many vines per acre, what's the cost of the vines, the vine training, sheds, amenities, fencing, and so forth. So that will get you to your annual or to your development costs. And then finally, your profit and loss statement, your in cash flow over a 15-year period with the ability to put in additional income subsidies. A lot of times you're farming now, so there might be dollars available from the USDA or different agricultural things or state development departments and that. Do you have any other large capital purchases you need to record? Variable costs, which could be an annual 2% increase, say, in cost of living that you can put across here, and so forth. And then again, it'll give you where and when you're going to break even and start to create some actual positive cash flow. Okay, so that's the Vineyard program.
I hope it's sooner than 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, the more you show me, the more sleep I'm going to lose.
Yeah. Well, you know, it bears repeating over and over again that the cliche is that you can make a small fortune in the wine business, but you've got to start with a large fortune, and it'll become small. But really, the lack of rigor of basic finances and accounting and really knowing what people are getting into, people that come out of really successful careers in business and even in production and agriculture and whatever, when it comes to wine, we just kind of get nutty and doing the due diligence and understanding and planning and working the plan. I mean, the best the way I know of success is to have a really complete, accurate, and thorough plan, and then to execute the plan and make the adjustments as necessary along the way. And so many people go into the wine business with no plan whatsoever and very little understanding of the finances involved. Okay. All righty. What else?
What else is on the agenda?
That's it for this evening. And Wednesday we'll be transitioning to I think something a lot of you are going to find really fun. And that is, we're going to be using a different workbook. I'll introduce it on Wednesday. And then we're going to give you a way to set up to do a blending exercise with friends, family, associates, people on the street, however you want to set it up. And as we're doing that, we're also then going to look at different business opportunities. We'll be covering winery business structures, and then things like the bulk wine market, a vibrant business called Shiners, looking at different ways to think outside of the basic winery we're all taught about. Then the last thing, I sent you all a link to this site, because when we get to the end of the course, we're going to talk about how difficult it is to forecast what's next. What are millennials going? Who are millennials? What are they going to look like as a market? Where do I find data? Who are my primary competitors? What do I need to know about them? And so throughout the course, I'm going to send you links like this so that you can start to look at what's hot and what's not, and what's growing, and what's kind of going on in supply and demand. Okay? So we'll, as we go, these are great things to take a look at, and also to discuss on the discussion forum as you see fit. Okay? All righty. Well, that's it from my end. Any final thoughts or questions?
No, I think I just need time to look over everything.
Okay, fantastic. Well, have fun. And thank you guys for being on the call. It makes a big difference, and hopefully you'll be able to join on Wednesday.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.